I want you to picture a scene. It's a Saturday afternoon. The sun is filtering through the window, mocking your indoor confinement. Before you, scattered across the living room floor in a state of chaotic surrender, are approximately 4,713 pieces of pale Swedish wood, a bag of assorted metal bits, and all look vaguely the same, and a single cryptic Allen key. You're trying to assemble the Fjordgruven bookshelf. You also have the instructions, or rather, you have a single folded sheet of paper featuring a series of pictograms. There's a cartoon man alternately smiling, looking confused, and then pointing emphatically at a diagram that seems to defy the laws of physics. There are no words. None. Just arrows, exclamation points, and the occasional drawing of a crossed-out hammer, which you only notice after you've used the hammer, and there's a distinct crescent-shaped dent in what you now realize is the front-facing top shelf. Hours later, you stand back to admire your work. It looks like a bookshelf, mostly. It leans a little to the left, like a sailor three sheets to the wind, and you have a nagging suspicion that the small pile of leftover screws on the floor was probably important. You place a single lightweight paperback on a shelf and hold your breath, half expecting the entire structure to collapse into a pile of expensive kindling. This, in a nutshell, is how most of us go through life. We are handed the most complex, brilliant, and maddeningly intricate machine ever designed, the human self, with no instruction manual. We're given a body, a brain, a swirling vortex of emotions, and a consciousness that spends half its time wondering what to have for dinner and the other half pondering the heat death of the universe. And then we're just let loose. Go to school, get a job, fall in love. Don't mess it up. Good luck. We learn how to do calculus, how to write a 5-paragraph essay, how to pretend we've read Moby Dick. But no one ever sits us down and gives us a lesson on Intro to Your Own Anxiety, what it is and why it's currently making you want to hide in a closet. No one offers a course on advanced boundary setting for people pleasers, or a practical guide to understanding why you keep dating people who remind you of your most annoying parent. And so we do our best. We cobble ourselves together with bits of advice from our parents, things we see in movies, and frantic late-night internet searches. We end up like that leaning bookshelf. Functional, mostly, but with a few leftover screws, a worrying wobble, and a deep-seated fear that the whole thing could come crashing down at any moment. Welcome to the Journey Within. Now, this series is my attempt to hand you a toolbox and a blueprint. Not the blueprint, but your blueprint. Because the most radical, life-altering, and dare I say, essential skill you can ever develop is not coding, or public speaking, or even making the perfect sourdough, it's self-understanding. Well, this series is all about psychology, but please don't let that scare you. I'm not here to analyze your dreams or ask you about your mother, unless you really want to talk about her, in which case, pull up a chair. I'm a writer and a storyteller who happens to believe that the principles of psychology are far too important to be locked away in academic journals and dense textbooks. They are tools for living. They are the instruction manual we were all supposed to get at birth. But this series is that manual. It's psychology for everyone. It's the journey within. And our journey begins not by looking at Freud or Jung, but by looking in the mirror. I'm Danny, and this is a new episode from our new series, The Journey Within, from English Plus Podcast. So why bother looking? Let's be honest. For a lot of people, the idea of self-discovery sounds, well, exhausting. It conjures images of weeping in a therapist's office, dredging up childhood traumas, or sitting on a cushion trying to think about nothing while your brain helpfully supplies a list of every embarrassing thing you've ever done. I'm fine, we say. I'm busy, I don't have time to navel gaze. I have bills to pay and a Netflix queue that isn't going to watch itself. This resistance is completely normal. It's a defense mechanism. The inner world is a messy, complicated place. It's easier to focus on the outer world, the world of promotions and home renovations, and getting the kids to soccer practice on time. We spend decades curating our external lives, crafting the perfect career path, the perfect family photo, the perfect Instagram feed. We become master architects of our surroundings, while the building we actually live in, our own mind, has rooms we've never even opened the door to. Think of it like this. Your mind is a car. For many of us, as long as the car gets us from point A to point B, we don't think much about what's happening under the hood. But then, one day, a little light flickers on the dashboard, the check engine light. What's your first reaction? If you're like most people, it's a 4-stage process. First stage is denial. It's probably nothing, a faulty sensor. Then the next stage is bargaining. Okay, little light, if you just turn off, I promise I'll get an oil change, next year. Then the next stage is anger. Why is this happening to me? This car's a piece of junk. And finally, the last stage is creative avoidance. A strategically placed piece of electrical tape over the light. Problem solved. We do the exact same thing with our internal warning lights. That persistent low-grade anxiety? That's a check engine light. That flash of irrational anger when your partner leaves a wet towel on the bed? Check engine light. That feeling of emptiness on a Sunday evening even when everything in your life is technically good? That, my friends, is a big, flashing neon check engine light with a siren attached. We ignore these signals because looking under the hood is scary. What if the problem is big? What if it's expensive to fix? What if we found out we've been driving around for 10 years with the parking brake partially engaged? Spoiler alert, many of us have. But here's the secret. Understanding your internal world isn't about finding out that you're broken. It's the opposite. It's about finally learning how your specific, unique, one-of-a-kind engine actually works. It's about learning that the weird, rattling noise it makes when you're stressed isn't a sign of imminent breakdown, but a signal that you need a different kind of fuel. It's about moving from being a passenger in your own life, nervously eyeing the warning lights, to getting into the driver's seat, popping the hood and saying, "All right, let's see what we've got here." The goal isn't to achieve some mythical state of perpetual happiness where you float through life on a cloud of bliss. That's a fantasy sold to us by people trying to market wellness teas. The goal is resilience. It's about understanding your own patterns so well that when life inevitably throws you a curveball, you don't just fall apart. You might stumble, you might get angry or sad, but you'll understand why. You'll have the tools to process it, to learn from it, and to get back up with a little more wisdom than you had before. Living an unexamined life is not freedom. It's being a puppet whose strings are pulled by forces you don't even recognize, by old childhood wounds, by unconscious beliefs, by emotional reactions you can't control. The journey within is about seeing those strings, understanding who's pulling them, and finally, learning to dance on your own. So, if you're going to read your blueprint, we first need to understand who drew it. Psychology has spent over a century debating this, often framed as a cage match between two heavyweights, nature versus nurture. Nature is your factory settings. It's the genetic hardware you were born with. It's your temperament, that innate tendency to be shy or outgoing, cautious or daring, calm or, not so calm. You know that friend who seems to be born with an unflappable Zen-like quality who could probably meditate through a rock concert? And you know that other friend who gets stressed out by a strongly worded email? That's temperament at play. It's the raw material. Think of it like different types of wood. Some of us are born as sturdy, reliable oak. Others are flexible, fast-growing pine. Some are exotic, temperamental mahogany. You can't change the fundamental nature of the wood. Pine will never be oak, but you can do a hell of a lot with it. You can sand it, carve it, stain it, paint it, and build something magnificent. Or you can leave it out in the rain to warp and rot. The raw material isn't your destiny. It's your starting point. So that was about nature. What about nurture? Nurture, on the other hand, is the construction crew. It's your upbringing, your family, your culture, your education, and all the experiences that shaped you. This is the environment that took your raw genetic wood and started building. Do you have a meticulous, loving construction crew that read the plans carefully, measured twice before cutting, and used the best quality varnish? Or was your crew a bit chaotic? Maybe they were overworked and stressed, cutting a few corners here and there. Maybe they were using a blueprint for a different house entirely, trying to build a colonial mansion out of your modernist pine. Maybe one of the foremen was an alcoholic who kept knocking things over. This is where our core beliefs are formed. These are the fundamental assumptions we make about ourselves, others, and the world, learned so early and so deeply that we don't even recognize them as beliefs. We think they're just reality. A child raised by a critical, demanding crew might develop the core belief, I must be perfect to be loved. As an adult, this person becomes a chronic overachiever and people pleaser, terrified of making a mistake, not because of any conscious thought, but because of a deep foundational blueprint that says flaws equals unlovable. A child whose crew was unpredictable and chaotic might develop the core belief, I cannot rely on anyone. This adult might struggle with intimacy, keeping partners at arm's length, not because they don't want love, but because their blueprint screams, trust is for suckers. It's safer to do everything yourself. These beliefs become the load-bearing walls of our personality. We build our entire lives around them, often without ever realizing they're there. The journey within us, in large part, about finding those walls, tapping on them, and asking, is this actually holding me up, or is it boxing me in? But the story doesn't end with nature and nurture. If it did, life would be far too predictable. There's a third wildcard architect in the mix, one we might call a dash of utter chaos. This is the stuff that life just throws at you. It's the unexpected job loss, the chance meeting with your future spouse in a coffee shop, the sudden illness, the global pandemic that forces you to learn what asynchronous work means. These are the earthquakes, floods, and surprise lottery wins of life. They are the unplanned renovations that can fundamentally alter the original structure. A traumatic event can be like an earthquake that cracks the very foundation of your house, forcing you to rebuild with a new understanding of how fragile things can be. A great love can be like discovering a hidden wing of the house you never knew existed, filled with light and possibility. The point is, your blueprint isn't a static, finished document. It's a living, breathing thing. It's a collaboration between your genetic predispositions, your nature, your life experiences, your nurture, and the unpredictable curveballs of existence, chaos. And here's the most important part, the part that this entire series is built on. You are not just the building. You are also the architect. At any point, you can pick up the plans, you can study them, you can decide that the wall your childhood crew built in the middle of the living room is actually really inconvenient and needs to come down. You can choose to rewire the faulty electrical system that keeps short-circuiting every time you get criticized. You can decide to add a window to let in more light. You can't change the wood you're made of. You can't erase the fact that the original construction crew was a bit shoddy. But you can take over the project. You can become a conscious, intentional renovator of your own inner world. Now let's talk about your tools for the journey, and this is just a sneak peek. Okay, so you're sold, or at least you're intrigued. And the proof to that is that you're still listening. You've accepted that you're a slightly wobbly bookshelf built from a unique combination of genetic wood and environmental construction, and you're ready to at least look at the blueprint. What now? How do you actually do that? This is what the rest of our journey together will be about. We're going to fill your toolbox with practical, evidence-based psychological tools that you can use in your everyday life. This isn't about becoming a therapist, of course. It's about becoming a more skilled human. Here's a little preview of what's in the toolbox. Tool number 1, the flashlight of awareness. Before you can renovate a house, you have to walk through it and see what's actually there. You need to explore the dusty attic, the creepy basement, and that weird closet that smells faintly of mothballs. Awareness is your flashlight. And when I say mindfulness, I'm not necessarily talking about sitting cross-legged for an hour. I'm talking about the simple, radical act of paying attention to your own experience on purpose without judgment. It's noticing the tension in your shoulders when your boss emails you. It's noticing the little jolt of pleasure when you hear a favorite song. It's noticing the story your mind starts telling you when you're stuck in traffic. This is a disaster. I'm going to be late. Everyone will think I'm incompetent. You just notice. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. You just shine the light on it. There's that story again. Interesting. That's what you tell yourself. This simple act of noticing creates a tiny bit of space between you and your automatic reactions. And in that space lies the power to choose a different response. Tool number 2 is the emotional translator, learning to speak feeling. For many of us, emotions are a foreign language. They're loud, they're confusing, and they often seem to show up at the worst possible times. We tend to sort them into 2 crude buckets: good feelings like happy and excited, and bad feelings like sad, angry, and anxious. We spend our lives chasing the first bucket and running from the second. But emotions aren't good or bad. They are data. They are your internal GPS system giving you vital information about your environment and your needs. Anger isn't just a bad feeling. It's a signal, often telling you that a boundary has been crossed or an injustice has occurred. Sadness isn't a weakness. It's a signal of loss, prompting you to slow down, grieve, or seek comfort. Anxiety isn't just a nuisance. It's your brain's threat detection system, trying, sometimes a little too enthusiastically, I know, to keep you safe from perceived danger. Learning to translate your emotions means getting curious about them instead of just reacting to them. It's asking, "Hello, anxiety, what are you trying to tell me right now? What threat do you perceive?" When you can understand the message behind the emotion, you can address the root cause instead of just trying to silence the alarm. And tool number 3, the story editor, rewriting your inner narrative. Well, we're all storytellers. Our brains are narrative machines, constantly weaving the raw data of our experience into a coherent story. This story is our reality. The problem is, we're often terrible storytellers. Or rather, we have a very persistent, very critical, and very unimaginative narrator living in our heads. And that narrator is often called the inner critic. This is the voice that tells you you're not smart enough for that job, or you always mess up relationships, or everyone else has it figured out except you. The principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, one of the most effective psychological approaches ever developed, are based on a simple premise. It's not the events in our lives that cause us suffering, but the stories we tell ourselves about those events. The good news is, you are the author. You can learn to catch that inner narrator in the act of spinning a negative, unhelpful tale. You can challenge its assumptions. You can fact-check its claims, and you can, with practice, start to write a new story, one that is more compassionate, more realistic, and infinitely more powering. You can't change the past, but you can absolutely change the meaning you make of it. And now for tool number 4, the relationship compass, navigating the human maze. No blueprint exists in a vacuum. Our houses are built on streets, in neighborhoods, in cities. We are social creatures, and our inner worlds are constantly interacting with the inner worlds of others. This is where things get really fun and really, really complicated. Why do you feel so comfortable and energized around one friend and so drained and anxious around another? Why do you keep getting into the same argument with your partner over and over again? Why is dealing with your family so much? We'll explore the psychology of relationships, drawing on ideas like attachment theory, which explains how our earliest bonds shape our adult relationships to help you build a compass for navigating the human maze. Understanding your own blueprint is the key to understanding why you connect, clash, and communicate with others the way you do. It allows you to build healthier, more authentic, and less dramatic relationships, not by changing other people, but by understanding your own role in the dance. Well, my friends, this episode is just us packing our bags. It's the orientation session before we set off on the expedition. In the episodes to come, we're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to use these tools to explore some of the most common rooms in the human psyche. We'll have episodes on the imposter in the corner office. Why do so many successful people feel like frauds? And how can we learn to own our accomplishments? We'll talk about taming your inner critic. We're going to talk about practical strategies for dealing with that negative voice in your head without just telling it to shut up, which never works, by the way. We're going to talk about the art of the boundary, how to say no without feeling guilty and protect your energy in a world that always wants more of it. We're going to talk about the science of habit, why it's so hard to change, and how to work with your brain's wiring, not against it, to build better habits. We're going to talk about anxiety, our overprotective friend, reframing our relationship with anxiety from an enemy to be conquered to a well-meaning, sometimes misguided, part of our internal security team. We're going to talk about the language of love and conflict, understanding attachment styles and communication patterns to build stronger, more resilient partnerships. Well, these are just examples of what we're going to talk about in this series. We're going to talk about so much more. Each episode will be a deep dive, blending science, storytelling, and practical, no-nonsense advice. My promise to you is that we will keep it real. We will avoid psychobabble. We will embrace humor, because sometimes the only sane response to the absurdity of the human condition is to laugh. And we will always bring it back to you and your own experience. So, here we are, standing at the trailhead of the journey within. The prospect might feel daunting. The idea of examining your own blueprint with all its quirks and complexities can be intimidating. You might be thinking, where do I even begin? Well, the answer is simple. You begin right where you are. You don't need to book a 10-day silent retreat or suddenly start journaling for 3 hours a day. The first step is just a subtle shift in intention. It's a commitment to be, for the rest of the day, just 1% more curious about yourself. When you feel a flash of irritation, instead of just acting on it or pushing it down, get curious. What was that? When you find yourself procrastinating on a task, instead of just beating yourself up, get curious. What am I avoiding right now? What feeling am I trying not to feel? When you have a moment of pure, simple joy, instead of letting it fly by unnoticed, get curious. What is this? What does this feel like in my body? Let me savor this for just one more second. That's it. That's the starting line. Curiosity. Gentle, non-judgmental curiosity is the key that unlocks the door to your inner world. The person you are going to spend the rest of your life with is you. You are your own roommate, your own business partner, your own companion through every triumph and every disaster. Wouldn't it be nice to get to know them a little better? To understand what makes them tick, what they're afraid of, and what makes them come alive? The journey within is the greatest adventure you will ever take. It's more thrilling than any mountain you can climb, more profound than any ocean you could cross, because the territory you're exploring is the very thing that is doing the exploring. The map is the territory. The bookshelf is also the builder. So, my friends, let's leave the scattered pieces and the confusing instructions on the floor for a moment. Let's put down the hammer. Let's turn away from the half-built project and walk over to the mirror. The most fascinating, complex, and important person you will ever get to know is staring back at you. So let's go say hello. Now with that, my friends, we come to the very end of the very first episode in our series, The Journey Within. Now my plan is to have a new episode from the series every week, and I will try to hold my end of the bargain, but I want you to hold your end of the bargain too. Just get a little bit more curious and stick around and come back to listen to other episodes from this series and other episodes from our podcast, because I have a variety of episodes here about a lot of other things if you want to take your knowledge and your English to the next level. And of course, if you want to unlock access to all the premium episodes, you can do that by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or on Patreon. You can find the links in the description of the episode. That being said, thank you very much. I'm Danny. Thank you for listening. I'll see you again next time. And remember, never stop learning with English Plus Podcast.